I thank the chairman, and I appreciate being here in Yuma, where there's always a very hospitable group of people that greet us, and I'm grateful for that. It's reflective of the unity of this community and how great you are. And we have we just heard from three great witnesses, and I also tip my hat today to the officers and agents of CBP and law enforcement. We recognize the challenges that you have, and I'm going to try to first undercut a narrative that our colleagues across the aisle raise, and they say that they'll tell you that 90% of fentanyl is seized at the border, at the port of entry, right? Port of entry. As if there is not a massive amount of fentanyl and other drugs coming between the ports of entry. So I'm going to ask the panel, why do you suppose that we are more successful at interdicting drug smuggling at a port of entry that has, I don't know, dogs, x-ray machines, material, and more agents than we would be between ports of entry? Mr. Lyons, you look like you're just chomping at the bit to answer that question.
No, the sheriff winked at me and told me to go.
So very good, please.
Mr. Biggs, Congressman Biggs, thank you for the opportunity. We learned last week, and this number we made public towards the end of the month, but the narrative of 90% coming to the ports has been changed a little bit in that because of the downturn over the January timeframe, 48% of the fentanyl is being intercepted between the ports and 52% at the ports. To combat that narrative, Border Patrol has now had the opportunity, because they're not spending 1.5, 1.7 hours processing each individual. And so they are now on the border being able to provide national security and border security.
Sheriff, do you want to add on that?
I will just confirm what Jonathan Lyons just said.
Thank you.
With our agents being able to get back out in the field, it's helped us intercept that.
Thank you. And Sheriff, I'm going to ask you a question. You mentioned juvenile drug smuggling, juveniles being used and exploited to smuggle drugs coming across, who have legal purpose to enter the country, or legal authority to enter the country through the port of entry. Please tell us about that.
That's correct. When we speak with our port of entry personnel, they are the ones that typically are the screeners when juveniles come across from Mexico to go to school each and every day. The cartels exploit them by asking them to carry fentanyl and other narcotics across the border when they're walking into the United States. These individuals are then apprehended by port of entry personnel, who then get a hold of DEA or the local narcotics task force, and then they end up getting charged as an adult because of the amount of narcotics that they have in their possession.
Thank you. I'm going to make a quick statement and then try to get time to get to Dr. Trenchel to ask him a question too. There's just so much. This is an incredibly broad topic. The violation of laws of this administration. I'm going to point out four quick things. They've changed the parole law. They haven't changed it. They are violating the parole law. The parole authority typically would be a case-by-case basis, 12 to 20 people a year per year until the Biden administration came in. Last year, more than 300,000 people received parole. And there's a promise of 360,000 more people this year from 4 different countries: Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. That's one violation. The second is the no deport. One of you mentioned the no deportation law. More than 1.2 million individuals have received due process and an order of removal because their asylum claim was bogus, found to be bogus by a court. This administration has forbidden ICE to pursue, look, and deport. The third thing is the violation of the First Safe Nation international law. That's another reference to the Remain in Mexico policy. If you had the First Safe Nation law and you enforced the First Safe Nation law, which we did under the Remain in Mexico policy, Yuma sector, the last year of the Trump administration, had fewer than 9,000 encounters. Last year, well over 300,000 encounters. That's the third thing. And so I will just leave it there so I can ask Dr. Trenchel this last question, because you said something that I think every American needs to hear. You are actually expending hospital funds, community hospital funds, to actually move people to family members or elsewhere around the country. and there are many that you are sending that you don't even know their destination. Please expand on that and tell us what that looks like.
Sure. So we've, when a patient comes into the hospital, we have to provide them with a safe discharge per CMS, and we do that. So a lot of that includes tracking down their family members. We've had to fly them to their families. We've had to air ambulance individuals for higher levels of care, and we've just had to durable medical equipment, wheelchairs, walkers, all these other items that we have to provide for patients for a safe discharge.
And you're not being compensated by the federal government or anyone else, and these individuals are not those that have been brought for medical treatment by CBP through some kind of legal mechanism.
Correct. Some individuals may have walked in, declared themselves a migrant, and we treat those. They could have come in by taxi. They could have come in by any means. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I'll yield back.
Thanks for all your good work. Chairman of the Subcommittee on Immigration, the gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Trenchell, you said that your hospital has incurred $26 million in uncompensated care over the past year. Obviously, that money doesn't come from nowhere. It comes out of what you'd otherwise be spending. So does this mean that there's $26 million less equipment for your patients, $26 million less staff to care for them?
It does. That extra revenue that we would have brought in would have gone back into the community, and we do that as a nonprofit. So it would have been either to purchase equipment, have additional access ports for patients here, bring in additional physicians. It would have been used for the benefit of our community, for sure.
Now, you say you serve all patients equally, but it is a zero-sum equation, isn't it? A bed that's taken by one person is not going to be available for another. An hour of a doctor's time on one person is not going to be available to care for another. So if your emergency room, for example, is packed with illegal immigrants, doesn't that mean, just as a simple mathematical equation, that legal residents must wait exactly that much longer for care?
Yes, it does. That's very true. We've had that experience in our emergency room. We've had that experience with patients who've had to delay elective surgery because other urgent migrant patients have come in who needed emergent surgery. We've had to delay maternity patients with planned inductions because we've simply been out of space in our maternity unit with migrant patients who've had deliveries, many of them just coming in at the same time for deliveries.
Now, of course, virtually all of these migrants don't stay here. Where do they go?
We don't know where they go. Some may go to Florida. They really go everywhere. We don't know.
So this is going to be impacting every hospital in the country.
Yes.
Sheriff Wilmot, are Mexican cartels operating in Yuma County today?
There is a cartel. Sorry about it. There is a cartel influence in Yuma County. We have two states in Mexico that border Yuma County. We have the Baja California, which is the Sinaloa cartel in Sonora.
So what are they doing on this side of the border? What are the cartels doing on this side of the border?
Well, they're the ones that are orchestrating the smuggling of narcotics and humans towards the east part of the county.
What are your greatest concerns for public safety from their activity here?
Well, obviously, first concern is the loss of life and the impact on our local communities. It's also the fact that when we have that many getaways, and we know how many countries have actually come through Yuma County, those also being special interest countries, what is this country going to expect to happen of these unknown individuals coming into the United States? Where are they going, and what is their intentions?
Could we expect to see the kind of violent cartel gun battles in our cities that we're now seeing in Mexico?
We have seen victims of that come into our county as well as other counties along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Is it just a matter of time before we see the same things here?
I believe they've already seen it in other states.
As we saw it in Tulare County in California just a few weeks ago. What's your warning to other communities from what you've experienced here?
We've been trying to warn other communities for the past couple years in regards to the activities that we're seeing here. It's not staying in the border, it's going across the nation, and I don't think you'll find a sheriff now throughout the United States that doesn't say that they're actually now a border county because of what the impacts they've had in their communities.